Hello and welcome to MIP TV, and with me as always is the wonderful Bob Cooke, and we're going to be reviewing another one of his extensive library. I'm sure Bob lives in a library. He's got a house, he's got a library, and he kind of sleeps maybe between the heavy tomes that he reads. And we got an interesting book. It's 2016. It's by Giles Barrow and Trudy Newton, people who you know, and it's called Educational TA. So tell us a little bit about Educational TA, Bob.
So here's the book.
Hey.
Educational Transaction Analysis by Giles Barrow and Trudy Newton. I was just saying off camera that in many ways this is a definitive book in the time and age of transaction analysis, because in the United Kingdom, if you go to a conference on transaction analysis, 90% of the participants and workshops will be from the clinical psychotherapy field. The other sort of 7, 8, 9, 10% is made up of counselling field, the organisational field, TA in organisations, and the educational field, and probably about 5% in the educational field, and there might be 2 or 3 workshops on how to use transaction analysis in education. Now, I was a teacher. That was my profession before I got trained as a psychotherapist. So I have an interest myself into how to use TA in education. So I've always followed the particular literatures that have been written. But this book is the first time, in my knowledge, though I might be incorrect, that the title Educational Transaction Analysis has been coined.
How interesting. So it is, as we say in teaching, a pedagogical perspective. In other words, it feeds into how one teaches and how the structure of teaching. And how does it, Bob? What does it?
Well, you've got Giles Barrow and Trudy Newton getting together 12, 13 of the foremost educators in transaction analysis, the idea being in TA concepts into education and how to use them practically and philosophically in one book. So 12 or 13 chapters by 12 or 13 different editors, people talking about TA concepts in education. So, for example, symbiosis, which is a TA concept, codependency in another name, if you like, how teachers can use that concept to look at how to help people teach, how to help kids, if you like, away from a merged position, so they can start thinking independently for themselves rather than being a merged process. There's a chapter on parent and child positions. The idea, I think, perhaps not in that chapter, but in one of them, that the internalized parent of the teacher themselves is bearing down internally with their own child and how that affects teaching. There's also the teaching of parent-adult-child concepts and how that's actually used in the classroom, and various other concepts of TA in the educational field, which I find absolutely fascinating, being a teacher myself.
Yeah, it is interesting. When I taught, it was noticeable. Especially things like transference, counter-transference, and parallel process, projective identification. How many of my colleagues carried that? And sometimes I'd be talking to a colleague, and I'd just say to them gently, who does this student remind you of? And it was amazing when you got a difficulty with a student, or maybe some kind of parallel process. It was really interesting to see them realise that it could be something from their own past.
Right. It's a very, very good question you said there, Rory. Who does this child remind you of? In other words, how has this child evoked certain feelings in you?
Yeah.
Often is their own child, their own particular history, their own adolescence. They're even going back to separation, individuation time. That's what I meant by symbiosis.
Yeah.
What child and what age child has this child evoked in yourself? And how do you operate from that position then? Do you go into a child and child competition? Or do you start acting out from an unaware parent position? How do you manage to maintain an executive adult or a robust adult in the here and now when your own history has been so evoked by that child in front of you?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting question because unlike client work where you're doing it for an hour, you may go away, you may be doing couples, you may even be doing groups, but as a therapist, if you're doing couples or individuals, you can go away, you can have a reflection, and it's usually for a set amount of time. If you're teaching for 3 hours and you've got 30 people in your class, there's all sorts of transactions going to be going on, played out at all sorts of different levels.
And you know what? I taught 16-year-olds to, oh God, in the evening school, 50-year-olds. But the classroom, the staff room. Now that's an interesting one. In the staff room that I was in this college, there's 27 teachers, and the amount of cross transactions, the amount of child and parent dialogues that were going on was absolutely amazing. And in fact, the staff room needed to have someone to come in and teach them transaction analysis or even team building or other things to help them be able to robustly become from adult in the teaching processes, I think.
Yeah.
So there's a chapter on that, but there's another concept that I really like from the TA world, which I think is really important in education, and that's the concept of strokes.
Yes. Yeah, Claude Schneider. Yes.
A unit of recognition, verbally or non-verbally. Now, we all know, for children, the importance of external validation. External validation is the basis of, I think, internal self-esteem. Without recognition and validation from significant other people, self-esteem stays low.
It's true.
That's really important.
It's true. And funnily enough, I was when I did my teacher call in 2000. I think I graduated in 2008, 2009. So not relatively not long ago. Yeah. And we looked at what was called the difference between task and ego-centered praise. And I think it was really, really useful because, you say to a child, that's great, you've done very well there, you've accomplished that task. What are you going to go on for next? What's your next thing? As opposed to going down the route of saying to a child, oh, you're the cleverest person in the world, you've done this. Stroking the ego, and I think that, there can be a bit of a route to disaster because, of course, if the next task they don't do as well on, they interject it as a failure of self. And I think that's pretty dangerous for an educator to go down that road.
You're absolutely right. And what about the concept of script? Now, the script in TAs and an unconscious life plan, which we take from childhood, we develop a plan and we play it out throughout the ages, adulthood into where we are now. And I think most psychotherapy disciplines would talk about the importance of the past on the present and the images that we've created and the stories we tell ourselves. And that all comes from our childhood days, not only, of course, in the parent world, but in the actual education world.
Oh, yes.
Teachers. So how important is teachers to understand the concept that the children make of the world around them? Because it's those early days where the children make their decisions, the actual decisions of the people that I see every day in my therapy room.
Absolutely. And from a teaching perspective, Bob, I've lost count of over the years how much transference I've had towards me from students who've seen me as all sorts of things that I'm not, and having to work with that, and sometimes in a particularly challenging environment where I've had to manage my own counter-transference.
Yeah, and teachers don't get taught any of these psychological terms, so they, in a way, perhaps know intuitively what we're talking about, and yet haven't got the tools, the language, the time time particularly.
Yeah.
To be able to reflect on what we're talking about here leisurely at 9:30 at night.
Yes.
But if teachers could take or even have some of these psychological languages, ideas to reflect on, to grow from this book, just from reading this book, to understand some of the psychology, some of the psychological terms, what a wonderful process that would be.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, Bob, we do have a number of our teaching colleagues watching this. If you are off to the chalk face tomorrow, well done. It's great. It's a great profession and a very needed profession, but maybe a book worth having a look at.
Oh, yes, please. Educational Transaction Analysis, 14 chapters by wonderful educators who are talking about how to use psychological concepts and help teachers understand and have a language to help their children own mental health and growth.
Fantastic. You can't get a better ending than that, Bob. So, as always, we'll put a link down below, so you can look at the book and inspect it. And we'll put a picture of it at the end of this. And as always, Bob and myself don't get paid for this. We just do it for our love of literature and something to do on a Tuesday evening.
Yeah, but really, these two books, fabulous what we've talked about.
Yes, yeah. So as always, Bob Cooke, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear. Thank you.
Dear.
Oh, sorry.